Have you had enough of the high sugar, sickly energy gels? Well, if so, you are not alone. I know a lot of athletes who simply had too many of these over the years or who have just never got on with them in the first place. Well, if you fall into one of those categories, I've got some good news for you. There are some brilliant alternatives out there, and I'm going to be covering them and sharing them with you today. Gels have been designed to allow us to take on carbohydrate whilst we're exercising and get glucose into our bloodstream and to our muscles as efficiently as possible. So it's no wonder that they are popular when it comes to endurance sports. However, they are obviously an artificial substance and fairly concentrated, which as a result can cause some tummy upsets. But how did athletes perform before the invention of gels? Well, they had no problem in racing and fueling rather efficiently. So some of these options that I'm going to look at today will involve rewinding the clock, but there's also some more modern alternative developments which I'll be looking at as well. And before we go on to those, it's just worth pointing out that if you are doing some endurance racing or training, anything over 90 minutes, then you need to start replenishing those carbohydrate stores that you already have in your body. And the recommended amount is around 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you're calculating any alternative energy. Carbohydrate intake shouldn't be limited purely to gels. Energy drinks were around far longer than gels and a very successful alternative. And the fact that they're already diluted for you means you're going to be getting that correct ratio. It's going to be kinder on your stomach. And obviously you can buy ready-made energy drinks, but you can also buy the powdered form. If you're doing that, just make sure you dilute with the correct amount of water for that reason. But one of the downsides of carrying an energy drink with you, especially when you're running, is the fact it's going to be much heavier and quite a lot to carry. But that said, if you're using gels, you should still be taking on around 300 to 500 mils of water for every gel, but check the recommendations on that one. And you can, if you're feeling brave or you like to stay with something more natural, experiment with making your own energy drink, whether that's with some fruit juice or coconut water, simply adding a little bit of honey and maybe a pinch of salt so you're getting your electrolytes in as well. Sticking with the drinking option, if it's the consistency of the gel that you don't like or you're worried that you're not going to get the right amount of water, then you can simply empty your gel into your water bottle, add the required amount of fluid that you should have for that gel, give it a good shake, and you've got it good to go without having to worry about doing any calculations whilst you're training or racing. My favourite, we are on to sweeties. Yes, they are not going to be as nutritionally precise, obviously, as a sports product, but they are going to be absolutely full of sugar and therefore energy. And there's so much choice out there. All you have to do is walk down any supermarket aisle and you will be spoilt with that array. So experiment with obviously what you like, but also what you can take on when maybe you're feeling a little bit hot or your body's under a bit more strain. So probably best to avoid anything that's really sour or fizzy in that case. Jelly babies are quite often people's go-to. They did used to be mine until I ate 3 bags this size over one weekend, and it put me off for several years. I am, however, pleased to say I am back on jelly babies again now, but I'm not going to dictate what you should eat. Another bonus of sweets is they're obviously going to be much cheaper than sports-specific products. The only trouble being you've got to make sure they get to the training session before you eat them all. And somewhere in the middle, not quite a gel, not quite a solid, you've got shot blocks, which are obviously easier to digest than a solid bar, but a different texture to a gel if a gel isn't quite what you like. And yes, they are sports specific, but if you want something similar, but without the sports nutrition, you could go for simply a block of jelly. It's what I used to use as a kid, or I think you guys in the States call it Jello. And this little block here contains 92 grams of carbohydrate, but it is worth remembering that jelly is obviously designed to be diluted with water. So if you are going to use these, make sure you consume adequate amounts of water to go with it. And you can't forget the banana. It's been used by athletes for years across all sports. In actual fact, I remember my granny telling me that I should eat bananas because she'd seen tennis players eating them on TV. But seriously, you obviously get bananas at fuel stations, in triathlons, and it's rather common to see a banana sticking out the back pocket of a cyclist's jersey. Now, an average banana contains around 30 grams of carbohydrates, and with it though, does come some fibre. And if you are using other fruits, which are going to be high in sugar, just be aware aware of their higher fiber content and also how easy they are to digest, especially if you're going to be working at a really high intensity. Solid foods such as energy bars have the benefits too, as they're much closer to normal foods, so your stomach is more likely to be used to them and able to digest it. And you can get something that's more sport specific, so energy bar that's going to be high in carbohydrates, low in protein and fat to make it most close to a gel option. Or you could go for something that's more slow releasing or more general. All you need to do is, again, walk down the supermarket aisle and you'll be spoiled for choice. So go for something that you like, because you're going to be more likely to use that as your fuel. Although there is the risk, just make sure it ends up in the sports nutrition cupboard, not in the snack jar. And homemade options are brilliant too. Flapjacks are a really common one for cycling, for example. You can make them higher in sugar by adding more sugar or honey, or you can make them more slow releasing with more oats and adding in nuts and seeds, for example. Sandwiches don't have to be for picnics. They can be a brilliant alternative to getting those carbohydrates in. If you make it simply with some jam or some honey, then you're going to make it nice and high in sugar. And if you want to keep it as a simple carbohydrate that's easy to digest, then I'd recommend using white bread. However, I know we are looking at gel alternatives, but if you're doing longer endurance efforts that are at a low level, you might start to want something savory. So why not replace the jam or the honey with Marmite? It's one of my favorites for a mid-ride snack. And if you want to take it up another level, then even add some cheese and you'll get the added bonus of some protein. And sandwiches don't solely have to be with bread. You could even use a malt loaf with a bit of butter inside, and then another one of my favorites. Raisins, dates, apricots and other dried fruit are packed full of energy, and being dried, they take up less room than their squishy fresh alternative. Bonus, you get more nutrients with the dried fruit, but just remember they are still high in fiber, so be aware of that. Then you've got nuts, especially if you're doing a longer low level effort, then nuts are great if you're working in that fat burning zone to give you that really slow releasing energy. And why not combine the both and make something like some energy balls? I've actually covered a recipe, or my favorite recipe, on the channel, so if you want a step-by-step guide, I'd recommend checking that one out. Before I finish, I just want to return to gels quickly. Maybe you've had a bad experience with a certain flavour or a certain brand. It is worth trying some others because they vary hugely. The brands such as Goo and Clif Bar are really thick style of gels, but then you've got the SIS gels, which are far more fluid and liquidy. Morton gels are another consistency again, so it's worth experimenting a little bit. But if it's the artificial side that puts you off, there are some natural options, often which contain chia seeds, and you can, even if you're feeling brave, experiment with making your own. I haven't done it before, but I do know that if you soak chia seeds, they will turn into a jelly, so you could try maybe soaking them in some apple juice and then add jam or honey and you've got your own homemade gel. Well, as you can see, there are so many options out there, so go away and experiment and try something new. And of course, I'm nosy, so let me know what you fuel with currently, or if you're going to try something else, how it is, or you've got any suggestions, you can do that in the comments section below. Give us a like and remember to check out our social media channels and give those a follow too.